It is January 21st, I think, which is, of course, a great day after the presidential inauguration yesterday. And I'm talking to my friend Sezi about a playlist that she has made to start off 2021. And take it away, Sezi. Tell us about the tracks that you've chosen, maybe individually or talk about the whole playlist, whatever you think.
Sure. So I thought that I would start my list with Soulwax. For me, a very important group. They're from Belgium, so they are two brothers actually, and they have been kind of like DJs and also kind of like a live band at the same time. And they remix a lot of people. And in fact, this year they kind of like released they had a kind of very iconic album that came out 15 years ago called Night Versions. They just brought it out one more time. So one of the tracks I have here called Krack is from that album, which is a re-release basically. But it is so good that if someone doesn't know it, I think it's a great way to kind of get to know Soulwax. And I suppose they sort of like introduced themselves as an electronic rock duo sort of thing. They're a lot into kind of like analog machines of all sorts and so on. They collect those. They are usually included in their tracks. The first track of the playlist is also from them called Empty Dancefloor. That actually just came out, I think, not even like a month ago. In fact, it was a promo kind of like track made for Apple Pods. And later on, they just sort of realized that it was too good to only be a promo thing, and they made a proper track out of it. So it's a dance track now. So I think it's a really nice track. So I sort of thought that I would like to put a kind of playlist that you could kind of like, sort of dance to at home. That kind of thing is what I had in mind. So this will kind of like hit the ground rolling, basically, the first one. And then comes Kings and Queens from Coppola. Coppola is also a DJ, but Brazilian DJ, quite young actually. And I love that track. It's the most danceable track of 2020, in my opinion. Of course, all these tracks are from 2020 because 21 didn't give us much yet.
Sure.
So
yeah, I'm super interested in the like rock drum samples actually in that first Soulwax track. I thought there would be like these really like hard hitting like electronic drum samples, but it has almost like this like 80s like big hair rock drum samples, which I thought were super cool, unusual to my ear. And of course, in the second track, just really loved the like close mic, like dry vocal. Has like a really great mix, really good like sub bass, and like you said, like danceable. Good vibes.
Very danceable and sort of like brings back the feeling of being together with people and that joyful kind of like sense of dancing together. I love that so much about that track. And then the next track is Rubber Sky. This is a really nice track, actually. I like it a lot because apparently for this whole album called Gene, LA Priest, which used to be actually a part of Late of the Pier. This used to be a British group actually. So he was the kind of like main guy of that group. His name is Sam Eastgate or something. He apparently built his own analog drum machine for this album, which took him like 2 years, which is what you hear in this track as well, which I really love. So yeah, it is really great. And I got to know him through actually Soulwax again, because they did a remix of one of the other tracks from the same album called What Goes On or something like that. Yes, so that one is also quite good. And then comes Night, of course, Kelly Owens. I think she sort of like doesn't really need any introduction anymore, right? You also like her quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I love this track. This is one of my favorite tracks of last year.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think for sure from last year it was absolutely. And many kind of like big like music journals, etc., all kind of like thought that her album was one of the best of the year. So not only this track, Night, is great from her album, but quite a bit of other tracks from the same album is really quite good too. This is her second album, actually. The first album was very good too. She's Welsh, so lots of British people here.
I love like the anticipation in this track. Like it has like the best, I mean, vocally, the way she sets up this like moment where she says, "It feels so good to be in love with you," or something like that. It's just like has this incredible like release in it. And she's so good at like just creating form and anticipation in her tracks.
But yeah, I think one of the things that she's really good at is also like what you were saying, like she sort of like builds it up and brings it to a sort of like climax. But unlike normal club climaxes. It doesn't feel so obvious. I sort of really like that about her tracks. And she is also very much into kind of like outros. Did you notice that? That she actually like really leaves a humongous amount of time for an outro that sort of almost becomes a thing of its own. I love that about Kelly Lee Owens too.
Very
So
cool.
yes.
I'll check that out. This track makes me feel like I'm like in college again. There's something about it just like makes me feel like I'm 22 and I'm like meeting new people, and like it just has like this really good youthful energy in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And at the same time, it really sounds like it is from 2020, doesn't it? Like it really
For
has
sure.
the sound of now, basically, which is really great. Um, After that, Turning My Head, I really like that. This is brand new. I think it's seriously like 10 days old or something like that. So Anja Schneider is a DJ from Berlin. And she also has a long-running radio program where you can actually listen to a lot of kind of electronic music, mostly from Germany, but from all over Europe. I think she's awesome. I really like this. This is more of a kind of like later in the night kind of like club sound. And it's very German, isn't it?
Yeah, but also there's Latin percussion in it, which I don't know. I found that to be very unusual. There's like bongos and congas and stuff like that, like randomly in this
right?
track.
I didn't actually pay attention to that.
I mean, they're just kind of like sparsely put in there, but it's really interesting. It also kind of, has like this like thriller vibe. So I could definitely feel the like late night, like it's like this like deep, like, like energy. It's really cool.
Yeah, I really like that. So, I mean, she's someone to watch as well. And she's also a producer, so she's pretty awesome. And then Everything You Need is also another very old track, actually. That might be a month old or something like this. Overmono is a group that is sort of new to me. They are also DJs, two people. And this is their latest EP. It seems that their sound is actually kind of like a little more polished here. Some journal that I read about them, maybe it was Pitchfork actually, they were sort of like calling them kind of like pastoral electronica. Apparently there is such a genre.
The genre for everything now.
Exactly. Well, sort of makes sense. Because at the beginning, the beat is really very strong, but later on, it sort of like goes into something a bit pastorally, actually.
Interesting.
So
I love the like detuned quality too, which I actually would say of this whole playlist, there is like a lot of detuned synth, like slightly detuned, or the pitch bends a little bit, or the harmony goes out once in a while.
Exactly.
And even in some of the later tracks in the vocals, there is some of this like bendy quality to it, which I think is really, really cool. And I love that aspect of like all the analog synth stuff, is that the pitch can be a little more real, or like a little more flexible, and have a little more expressivity.
I suppose I'm quite drawn to that. So it might be that I'm always kind of picking tracks that have that kind of thing, really. And then that brings us to Before, which of course you and I love very much. Who doesn't love James Blake? Seriously. I think that EP that came out last year was fantastic. Seriously. Those 4 songs, I listened to them to death. I don't know how many times I listened to them. And Before, I still listen to it and still find certain layers, stuff that he does with his voice, etc., that I didn't pay attention to before. It's quite something, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, his production skills are unreal. Like on all levels, like rhythm, genre, harmony, the vocal lines, the harmonizations, everything is just like, it's like all going at 100%, and it's just like so rich that it's I mean, it's like symphonic. The scope of his tracks is like, I don't even know how long it takes him to make these things, but they're insane to listen to. So much really ear candy in every track. It's incredible. And just at the same time, it's just incredibly beautiful and moving. There's something about, and maybe that's just his voice or something, that just has this quality of just being like incredibly beautiful and, sometimes melancholic or something, but it's really amazing.
That's so true, because I was actually thinking about his way of singing a little bit. It sort of reminds me a little bit of, not that it is anything like David Bowie, but you know how Bowie's sound is sort of like also very mannered in a way, but once you kind of buy into it, you love it so much, and it seems absolutely genuine. I think the same kind of thing goes on actually for James Blake, because once you hear it the first time, you sort of think like, okay, that's an interesting way of singing. But once you get used to it, you sort of realize actually it's really quite genuine. I mean, it's very sincere. That, I think, what you're referring to, and I really love that about his voice very much.
For sure.
Yeah, he's just great. Anything he does, I'm willing to listen to, basically. Yeah. And the very last track of another person's music that I think listened to a lot actually in 2020, Tame Impala, the Slow Rush album. The thing is that I don't know about you, but I listened to that one also to death. So I actually almost cannot listen to it anymore because I overdosed on it. So because it's also too good, of course. And that's why it's now time for listening to its remixes. And among the other remixes, this one by Fortet just came out, and I think it is really lovely. It is super tranquil, right? Puts you into a kind of really calm kind of mood that we can all kind of have right now, in need of right now. And there was another remix that came out maybe a couple of months ago, the Borderline, and that one was by Blood Orange. That one is also very good, but I also listened to that one too much. So I'm just in need of new Tame Impala takes because, yeah, James Blake and Tame Impala for me are just basically, I just love them a lot.
Yeah, I think it's cool that you kind of send out this playlist with like things that feel more like songs, you know, with like verses and choruses and like really vocal forward, you know, like listening to lyrics and things like that. Because this playlist is obviously like very dance heavy, very electronic, you know, synth heavy, and even just hearing actually that harp at the beginning of the last track, like suddenly it's like, oh, like a real instrument or something. It just like immediately kind of like is like this great coda to the whole playlist, which I really thought was like kind of cool, how there's like this little twist at the end of this like, you know, fun dance, you know, detuned synth, 4 on the floor, kick drum kind of. I mean, honestly, it reminds me of us when we used to hang out and in Cornell, Friday nights, late night. This has like a very good, like after we've hung out at the bar and we're hanging at somebody's house, like, you know, vibe. This whole playlist does,
2 in the morning kind of vibe. Yes.
Awesome. Well, this is amazing. Thanks so much for putting this together and kicking off, you know, this strange lo-fi website that hopefully people will find new music on. And I mean, it's sort of inspired by the fact that I know all these people all over the world who I share music with all the time. You know, we're just always people looking for new stuff to listen to, because I think there's some people who get into music just because they really like to listen to music. You know, obviously there's people who like to create it, like to perform it, all this sort of stuff, but for me, it's just listening constantly. I just love the idea of hearing something unusual or something new. And, you know, I have students always asking me, like, where do I find music, or where do I find stuff that's, you know, not mainstream or unusual? And hopefully we can be a little bit of a resource for that. So we'll be putting up more videos, talking to more people, trying to bring some, you know, and also like people listen to all kinds of stuff now. There's no genre specific, you know.
Exactly.
So like, people are listening to more different kinds of things probably than ever before, just because it's accessible. But at the same time, like marketing has become more and more specific. So like finding lots of different kinds of things, I think is actually kind of hard.
Exactly, so because the algorithm always gives you what you already like. So curated kind of like playlists is, they are kind of like precious, I think.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Till next time.
Yes. 40-year-olds trying to be cool.
Such nerds. And that's the thing, we were never cool.